This month, we're going to be diving into a new Bible study series that we are calling Rare Birds. And in this series, for the next few weeks, we're going to be taking a deep dive into some of the smaller prophetic books of the Old Testament. And this week, we're going to be diving into the book of Nahum that is found after the book of Micah. But before we dive into this little preview, I have to ask you to consider, what is political propaganda? How is it used to shape a history of countries or even shape the history of the world? When I think of political propaganda, my mind automatically goes to the histories that have abused people or used their power to do evil deeds to the world that have not, in their way with power, benefited the society. So the ones that come to mind that are the most famous, of course, are Hitler, who, when he rose to power, his own political machine used propaganda through different avenues of different leaders and people who were in government to support him, but also promote this very anti-Semitic message that led to the extermination of the Jews in Germany. And it shaped a whole nation into turning to that type of leadership. You think also of Stalin being another figurehead who also used political propaganda to prop himself up. When I studied politics and music, a course I took in my graduate studies, I learned about the music that was even written for these political propaganda machines. Stalin had music and artistry and paintings that portraits of him in power where he looked like this kind, gentle leader. But underneath the surface, the people around in these countries were suffering, and there was not a good use of power that was benefiting to all people. So the reason I bring that up is because as we dive this week into the book of Nahum, that is going to be a major theme in this book. The history that was happening with the Assyrians was that they were this political powerhouse, and they were taking over in all these regions around, including Judah, the southern kingdom, which the book focuses on. Now, Assyria, using this political propaganda, was going to these vassal kings and all these different regions to prop up that, yes, Assyria, look at this mighty army. Look at this Assyria whose god Baal is above all other gods. But how God responds, the one true God, is to turn their own propaganda upside down on its head and use it in a prophetic way to tell them that they will not win the day. Now, the book of Nahum is broken up into two major sections. The first section is a poem outlining kind of who God is to the Assyrians. This is a God who is not going to sit by the sidelines while people around are being beaten down by the powerful, the ones who are using their power in wicked ways to, keep people down, to overtake. No, this is a God who will have enough at some point and will step in and will seek vengeance. This is a God also who says that God will show up in the storm clouds, and that to Assyrians' ears would have perked up to them because their own God, Baal, was the God of storms, the God who did control elements of nature. And God is saying, no, 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 I am the one true God who will be able to create, but also be able to destroy and to take away. There is hope, though, in this poem. And we first see it in verse 7, where God talks to the Israelites, it seems, in this moment, or maybe even to the whole crowd who does here, to say that God is good, that God is good, and those who turn to God, that God will see them and will be a stronghold, a safe keeping for them in this time of vengeance that God will come to the earth. Now, in chapters 2 and 3, we have the prophecy and the oracles against Assyria. Assyria being this mighty nation that used its power to overtake and say, look at what we have plundered, look at what we have taken. Now God is going to flip that on its head and say, you who have boasted about these things, well, be prepared, because what you have done to those who have been victims of your plundering, victims of you overtaking their land, the same exact thing is going to happen to you. This is God showing up to say, well, what goes around comes around. The same fate that you brought on to others is the fate that you will meet. And soon this mighty king of Assyria that has propped himself above all the people will soon be at the feet of his enemies. And the way that the people will respond will not be sorrow for this one who thought he was most powerful or deserved worship from the people. No, there will be rejoicing. God says there will be rejoicing and clapping of hands when this king falls. So this week, I invite you to come as we read through the whole book of Nahum and dive into those little itty bitty details and have a discussion around this part of the biblical story. See you then.